Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. So I will be talking about the correlation between vitamin D and thyroid problems. So a few years back I found out that I have what is known as Hashimoto syndrome. So it sounds kind of scary, but it's basically an autoimmune condition, and people who suffer from Hashimoto, they have underactive thyroid. Now, thyroid gland is somewhere near your neck, and it's basically regulating your metabolism. So, if your thyroid is underactive, you feel tired, you feel exhausted, your muscles hurt, and you basically feel like crap. You get a good night's sleep, you wake up in the morning, and you feel like crap. So, that's how I had been feeling for a while, and finally, my doctor ordered a whole bunch of thyroid tests. So, there is something called TSH, and then there is also something called T4 and T3. So, these are the levels of your thyroid in your system, and they can tell whether you have these condition or not. So it's a simple blood test and your doctor will order it. So in my case, what happened was, initially I found out that my thyroid was underactive, but then my doctor went one step ahead, and she said, like, let's try to figure out why your thyroid is underactive. So she gave me this particular test. I have the results here, let me pull it out. So the name of this test is thyroid peroxidase, and it's basically a particular kind of antibody, and elevated levels of antibody of this particular antibody in your system is not good. When I got myself tested, this is 27th May 2020, it was at 87. Appropriate level, yeah, it's listed here. It should be less than 9 IU per milliliter. I was 87, so I was almost 10 times more than what it should be. And the presence of this antibody in your system is an indicator that you have Hashimoto syndrome. This level was high, and my doctor at that time said, okay, I will give you thyroid medication to bring your thyroid levels to normal. There is no cure for Hashimoto, so I can't give you any medicine for that. But she suggested that I make some diet changes, and one of the things she told me was that you get off gluten. And then I had another test done 3 months later, and my levels dropped. And then I had another test done 1 year later, and you can see that my levels dropped again. So this was a positive change for me. Right around the time when I found that I had Hashimoto, my doctor also gave me vitamin D test, and then I found that my vitamin D levels were very low. So at that time, I did not realize that these two things were actually connected. Since then, I have done a whole bunch of research on vitamin D, and what I have found is that vitamin D is very helpful for fighting autoimmune diseases, and that includes Hashimoto syndrome. So vitamin D is almost like a fuel that your body is using to fight, invading infections, bacteria, virus, COVID-19 and all those things. But it also uses your vitamin D to basically keep your autoimmune diseases. So something like Hashimoto and a whole bunch of other autoimmune conditions, it keeps that in check. So if your vitamin D levels start dropping, that is a sign that your body is experiencing some kind of inflammation from an autoimmune condition, and it needs the vitamin D. Vitamin D is almost like a fuel, and your body needs that vitamin D. And if the vitamin D levels are going down, you should ask yourself the question, why is your vitamin D levels going down? I live here in Northern California. There is plenty of sun here, and I do go out. I do enjoy, spending time in sun. So I was perplexed why my vitamin D was going down, because I was spending enough time in sun, and it did not make any sense why my vitamin D levels were down. And so finally I put the 2 and 2 together, and I realized that my Hashimoto syndrome, I don't know when it activated, but for the last few years, since I got this vitamin D deficiency and also my underactive thyroid, I had been feeling like crap. I felt very tired, I felt exhausted, my muscles hurt, and at that time I didn't understand why suddenly I was feeling so exhausted. I have always enjoyed outdoor activities. I love swimming, and what started happening was that I would go for lap swimming, and by the time I was done with my lap swimming and I would come back home, I was like dead. My arms and legs would hurt so bad. I would just collapse on my bed, and I couldn't move for until the next morning. All this eventually made sense because my thyroid levels were all whacked. So my metabolism had collapsed. That causes you to put on weight, and it also causes you to be lazy. You are lethargic. Your brain also kind of feels foggy. You feel stupid. You feel like your IQ has dropped 20-30 points. and I work in tech industry. So that's something that I cannot afford to have. I can't afford to drop my IQ by 30 points because I will probably get fired from my job. So all these things were really bothering me, and I'm glad that my doctor was able to figure out the why this was happening. So it was a double-edged sword for me. I had two conditions that were messing me up. One was my low vitamin D and the other was my underactive thyroid. And guess what, these two conditions were actually not really two separate conditions, they were connected. So here this is my thyroid peroxidase, and remember, this needs to be low. So it should be around 9. I'm sitting here at close to 90. So this is when I found out. Then I started consuming gluten. I stopped eating gluten and I started taking vitamin D supplements. So as my vitamin D serum level in my blood started going up, this particular antibody which was causing thyroid problems, that started going down. So this was good. I was able to bring it to almost 40. But what happened was that right around this time, when my blood test came back, and my vitamin D serum level was around 67 to around 70, and at that time I thought, hey, this is too high. And I was going by the chart that the FDA has published, and their chart says that anything below 30 is suboptimal, anything below 20 is deficient, above 30 is fine. So mine was 67. So I thought, hey, this is too much, and maybe this can cause hypercalcemia, or maybe I will get kidney stones. I'm really scared of kidney stones. So as a result, I dropped my vitamin D supplementation. So I was taking 10,000. Actually, I dropped it to below 5,000. I was like, I don't need this much vitamin D now. And so guess what happened? After I dropped this and I had my subsequent test, this was just 6 months later, and this level had shot up. And this is when my doctor asked me, Yana, are you taking vitamin D? And I told her, yeah, but I have dropped my dosage. I'm taking around 2000 IUs per day. And she said, no, you cannot do that. You need to take higher dosage, and don't worry about 67 nanogram per milliliter vitamin D serum level. That's fine. Anything up to 100 is fine. Once you cross 100, that's when you have a risk of hypercalcemia and you have a risk of kidney stone. Since then, I have bumped up my vitamin D dosage again. I'm taking 10,000 IUs of vitamin D every day, and I have a test which is scheduled next month. So I will see if this thing, if it goes down or what happens. And so I will make another video, a follow-up video, and I will share that. But so far, I see a very clear correlation between my vitamin D serum level in my blood and my underactive thyroid. So the presence of this thyroid peroxidase, this is a direct indicator of how bad your Hashimoto syndrome is. So I came across this very interesting paper. It's about relationship between vitamin D and thyroid, and the conclusion that these authors are drawing is actually matching with my own personal experience with respect to my vitamin D serum levels and my underactive thyroid situation. So let's take a look at this paper. It's actually very interesting. So here the authors are saying that over the years, researchers have been fascinated by the intricate molecular interplay between vitamin D and thyroid. So apparently researchers have known this for a while, but the doctors here in the United States, at least, they don't know this, because I was diagnosed with low vitamin D, and I was also diagnosed with underactive thyroid, but my old doctor could not even draw the line between those two and say that, hey, these two things are related. They just told me, hey, you take some vitamin D supplements, your vitamin D is low, and for your thyroid I will give you Synthroid and some of those other synthetic hormones to fix that. But they never made the connection that these two things were actually correlated. So anyway, the authors here say, in this regard, attempts have emerged to demonstrate the role of vitamin D in thyroid disorders. This article has reviewed the existing literature on the role of vitamin D in hypothyroidism. So this is a fascinating paper, and I will link this paper in the video description below. You can go and read it. It's a really long paper. A lot of information here, but I have highlighted what I found useful. So let's go over that. So here they are talking about the symptoms of thyroid, and these are the exactly things that I was experiencing. So it says the typical clinical symptoms encountered in outpatient practice. This is for underactive thyroid. You feel fatigue, and I felt tired all the time. You feel cold, and this was also something which I was experiencing. In my home, I was the one cranking up the heater while my wife and everybody else were like, Dad, why are you why are you making the house so warm? So then I had to wear multiple layers of clothes. I would have my socks and multiple layers of clothes inside my t-shirt. It was kind of funny, but I always felt cold. Then you have dry skin, and again I was experiencing this. I told you, right, I used to swim, so after swimming I would literally bathe in moisturizer because my skin would get so dry, it was like paper, and I started getting paper cuts also. Reading a book and I would just get a cut. So my skin was dry and it was prone to getting cuts, and none of these things were making any sense at that time because I didn't know that I had this underactive thyroid problem. Some of the other symptoms are constipation, muscle aches. Yes, I was experiencing muscle ache. After my swimming I would feel so exhausted and my muscles would hurt, really badly hurt. Decreased sweating, so I didn't experience this. Thickening of the skin, brittle hair, hair loss, so I didn't experience all the symptoms. So this part is really interesting. Let me read this one out. So it says that the emerging prevalence of hypovitaminosis D, which is basically vitamin D deficiency in populations with hypothyroidism, which is your underactive thyroid. So there is a correlation between those two, and it might be attributed to the evolution of the vitamin D3 receptor and the receptor for thyroid hormone from a single primordial gene, causing a strong homology between these receptors. So in simple English, it's basically saying that the vitamin D receptor and the receptor for the thyroid hormone, they share the same gene. So from an evolutionary point of view, these two molecules are connected. There is a strong chemical connection between these two, and so if you suffer from underactive thyroid, odds are that you also have low vitamin D, and these two things are not two separate problems. You are actually experiencing something which is it's like this is causing that and that is causing this, and you have to fix both to get better. So that's what I am trying to do with my health. And here is the gist of this research paper. So this review article aims to explore the molecular and clinical relationship between vitamin D levels and hypothyroidism, and underline the prognostic alterations due to vitamin D supplementation in hypothyroidism, underactive thyroid. Okay, so here are the conclusions. The overwhelming amount of evidence pointed to a correlation between vitamin D deficiency and an increased risk of having or developing hypothyroidism and thyroid cancer. So after once these researchers, they went through a whole bunch of published research papers, and their conclusion is that there is definitely an overwhelming evidence of vitamin D deficiency and underactive thyroid. So I don't know why the doctors here in US don't share this information with their patients. My doctor did not. I'm just glad that she ordered both the tests, the vitamin D test and the underactive thyroid test, and then I put two and two together and figured out that these two things are actually connected. There seems to be a dynamic relationship between the severity of Hashimoto and vitamin D deficiency. An inverse association was recognized between serum vitamin D concentration and anti-thyroid antibody levels. So basically they are talking about this chart that I showed. This is your thyroid peroxidase levels. So to bring this low, you need to elevate your vitamin D serum level in your blood. So there is an inverse relationship, and that's the reason why this thing shot up for me, because right around this time I actually cut my vitamin D supplementation levels. I was taking 10,000 IUs, and like an idiot I stopped taking 10,000 IUs. I was worried about kidney stones and hypercalcemia, so I stopped taking my vitamin D levels, and look what happened. This thing started shooting up again. Okay, so let's keep reading. You need to have normal physiological vitamin D concentration. It's required for optimal thyroid function. So like in my case, my vitamin D serum level was like 13 or something, 13. So it was very low, and at that time my Hashimoto was at the peak. It was around almost 90, 10 times more than what it should be. If your vitamin D levels are low, also get tested for thyroid, and make sure that your thyroid is functioning normally, because if you have low vitamin D, odds are your thyroid is also out of whack. So the authors are saying we recommend more future studies examining the effects of vitamin D and its analogs in the prevention of AITD. So AITD is autoimmune thyroid disease, which is Hashimoto, and its potential use in the treatment and prognosis of AITD, as it would aid in crystallizing the conceptualization and tailoring the treatment strategy of. So it's all fancy English, but basically what they're saying is that we need to study this more. For some bizarre reasons, a whole lot of doctors here, they are reluctant to even offer a vitamin D test. They are like, no, you don't need vitamin D test. I don't know why they do that, but stand your ground and ask your doctor, no, I want that. And if the doctor is not giving you, then go find another doctor. You should get vitamin D test, and if your vitamin D is very low, and if your thyroid is underactive, then definitely get the thyroid peroxidase test, because your thyroid condition may be because of autoimmune condition, which is Hashimoto. So these things are all connected. You need to basically fix everything to basically feel healthy. So that's what I'm trying to do. Like I said before, I have bumped my vitamin D supplementation again to 10,000 IUs per every day. So about a month from now, I will go and get my thyroid levels tested, my thyroid peroxidase, my TSH, T3, T4, vitamin D serum level. I will get all those things tested. And what I hope to see is that this thing goes down, hopefully below 40. That's what I want to see. And I want my vitamin D serum level to be 70, 75, somewhere around that. Anything below 100 is fine. So that's where I want my vitamin D levels to be. Ultimately, my goal is that I feel good, so that when I go swim, I don't feel exhausted. I don't feel like a dead guy with like broken arms and legs, can't move my arms and legs, my muscles hurt. But I want to fix my autoimmune condition. Presence of this thyroid peroxidase, which is at an elevated level 10 times more than what it should be, this is really bothering me. So I'm glad that I have done some research and I have found a correlation between vitamin D and Hashimoto. So all the things that I have learned so far about vitamin D, I actually ended up writing a book. It was initially for my own personal benefit, but then I realized that this was something that other people will also find useful. So all the vitamin D related information that I have collected, how vitamin D helps with your autoimmune condition, with fighting diseases, boosting your immune system. So all the stuff that I have learned, I have put that in a book. So I will link that book in the video description below. You can download that book. I think you will find that book very useful if you have the conditions that I explain in this video. Doctors here really don't share all this information. I guess we need to do our own research and find out all this information. So yeah, go ahead and download that book if you are interested, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.